The From the Bench Sports Podcast, bringing you analysis, opinion, and insight into the world of sports. With your host and founder of AccessMediaGlobal.com, Mark Janisch.
Hello and welcome, everybody. This is the From the Bench Sports Podcast. My name is Mark Janisch. This podcast is being recorded on September 19th, 2020. I'm going to go over the Week 2 NFL picks. I do these picks weekly for your help and entertainment for the most part. I'm going to give you my picks to win games and do the over-unders. For those of you that are new to this podcast, over multiple podcast platforms, including iHeartRadio, Deezer, Stitcher, Libsyn, Spreaker, and other podcast platforms. This is a weekly program and podcast during the NFL season. So right now we're going to get into the games. This is going to be a 12 to 15 minute podcast. You're welcome to go to AccessMediaGlobal.com for any and all sports information. What I have posted there right now is Week 1 highlights from the Rams, the Raiders, the Seahawks, and the Chargers. So we're going to go through some games here. We have the Bears and the Giants. The Bears are favored by 5.5. The over-under is 42. Even though Mitchell Trubisky had an excellent fourth quarter and caught fire last week, this is one of those games that I wouldn't necessarily bet if I was in Las Vegas or one of those betting options. But the over-under is 42. I go ahead and take the Bears and the over at 42. The Bills and the Dolphins. The Bills are favored by 5.5. The over-under is 41. Go ahead and take the over and the Bills. Mitchell Trubisky. I think that Josh Allen and the Bills are ready to make a move in the new wide open AFC East now that Tom Brady has been shipped to Tampa Bay by his own choice. The defense is smothering, and Josh Allen can continue to get hot even though he missed some receivers last week. The Dolphins have some climbing to do, so go ahead and take the Bills and the over at 41. The Bills once again favored by 5.5. The Steelers and the Broncos. This is going to be an interesting game. I think the Steelers defense, based on what they did against the Giants, which is not necessarily saying too much in that respect. I think that the Steelers are favored by 7.5. That's a lot. I like Drew Lock, and I was impressed with the effort on Monday night by the Denver Broncos. For those of you listening, I don't do necessarily games for Monday night or Thursday. I think the Thursday football is of poor quality, and the Monday night games, this podcast is generally for the Sunday games, and I don't necessarily do Monday night games as well, but I'm going to go ahead and do the Monday night games in the context of this podcast. This week it's going to be the Raiders and the Saints, and we'll get to that shortly. The Steelers are favored by 7.5. The over-under is 40.5. Go ahead and take the Steelers in the over, although the 7.5 points, I'm not really thrilled with that. I think it'd probably be more along the lines of 7. That half point is going to mess a lot of people up, in my opinion. The Titans and the Jaguars. Titans are favored by 8.5. The over-under is 43.5. The Jaguars didn't get pushed around by the Indianapolis offensive line, but that's because the Colts were throwing. The Titans will control the clock and run in this one. So go ahead and take the Titans and Derrick Henry. Take the Titans and the over. In this case, over the Jaguars. The Cowboys coming off a 2017 loss to the Los Angeles Rams. The Cowboys are favored by 4.5. The over-under is 53. I take the over in this game. And I don't really feel like Matt Ryan, who I believe is a mid-tier quarterback, he essentially has not impressed me since his loss to the Patriots in the Super Bowl after giving up a 25-point lead. I think he's a mid-tier quarterback, and he's made a lot of money being a mid-tier quarterback. I take the Cowboys in this one. I'd like to see the Cowboys open the offense. Not sure what that offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore out of Boise State, I believe, in his quarterback days. Kellen Moore needs to open up the offense and let Dak Prescott throw the ball just a bit more this week. So we'll see about that. Take the Cowboys in the over at 53. The Packers and the Lions. Week 2 for the Packers. Aaron Rodgers was looking great last week. Packers by 6.5. Go ahead and take the Packers in the over in this case. The Lions couldn't stop the run or the pass last week, and essentially Aaron Rodgers might torch the Lions this week. But then again, maybe Adrian Peterson and Matthew Stafford can keep the visitors in range this week. We'll see. But in this case, I go ahead and take the Packers over the Lions by the 6.5, and the over-under, again, take the over at 49.5. The Colts and the Vikings. The Colts are favored by 3. The over-under is 48.5. This game's a little bit scary. Phillip Rivers needs to stop throwing it as much. 46 times last week was a lot. He should be checking into runs, establishing a ground game, and setting up the play action. The Vikings lost some key players on the defense. I would go ahead and take the Colts in this one and the over at 48.5. Moving on to some other games today. The 49ers against the hapless Jets. Tough loss by the 49ers in a divisional game against the Cardinals last week. 49ers favored by 7. The over-under is 41.5. The 49ers are a little bit banged up. They have to travel across the country. The Jets are not healthy themselves as far as injuries go. This will be a road game for the 49ers. Go ahead and take the 49ers by the 7 and take the over at 41.5. The Rams and the Eagles. The Rams, without Todd Gurley and rookie receiver Van Jefferson, is really intriguing. The Eagles fell apart in their opener behind a patchwork offensive line, so look for that. Look for the Rams to dominate at the line of scrimmage. The over-under is 45.5. This is a pick'em game, so I would go ahead and take the Rams. I'm not sure Carson Wentz is fully recovered from the injuries he sustained a couple of years ago, because ever since he came back from his knee injury, he hasn't been the same. He was in line to be the MVP until that Week 13 injury against the Los Angeles Rams in Los Angeles, which has now become infamous in his case. Tom Brady and the Buccaneers facing the Panthers. Buccaneers by 9. The over-under is 47.5. Go ahead and take the Buccaneers and the over, and Tom Brady should bounce back. The Buccaneers, of course, have some awesome talent at outside receiver. Hopefully, Bruce Arians and Tom Brady will find a way to beat Carolina. I expect Tom Brady to win this game. Carolina's defense is vulnerable, particularly in the secondary, so look for that this week. The Cardinals coming off their win against the 49ers and the Washington football team. Okay, Cardinals favored by 7. The over-under is 46.5. The Washington football team got their first win for Ron Rivera overcoming and going through cancer treatment, so we wish the best to him. Washington's pass rush could be scary. 8 times they sacked Carson Wentz last week. Kyler Murray is a better quarterback, and DeAndre Hopkins is a threat at all times. And I would expect that the Cardinals would win this game. I probably don't think it's going to be 7, but I do take the over in this game and the Cardinals to beat the Washington football team. The Ravens and the Texans, Lamar Jackson played MVP-like in the season opener. David Johnson should be able to run it on the Baltimore secondary and the line. The Ravens are going to blitz Deshaun Watson, and it will be jarring. So I'll go ahead and take the Ravens and the over. The over-under is 50, and the Ravens are favored by 7. So once again, take the Ravens with the 7 and the over at 50. The Chiefs and the Chargers. I'll be watching this one very carefully. Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs favored by 8.5. The over-under is 47.5. This is pretty much of a layup against the... last week was a bigger layup against the Bengals for Tyrod Taylor. So it's alarming that the Chargers struggle. Still, week 1 is about false alarms, so they'll be better. Chiefs are still king, though. I expect the Chiefs to win this game. Take the over at 47.5. The Seahawks and the Patriots in the night game. That'll be on NBC, the National Broadcasting Company network in the United States. Seahawks favored by 4. The over-under is 44.5. Russell Wilson looking like he's going to make an MVP run. And he's backed by a defense that's gotten better with the addition of Jamal Adams. Cam Newton had a good debut, but he isn't facing Miami at home, if you know what I mean. In some people's eyes, the Seahawks have been favored to make the Super Bowl, but we'll see about that. So I go ahead, I take the 4 and the Seahawks, in this case, the 4, favored by 4, and take the over at 44.5. The Monday night game, the Raiders and the Saints. The Saints are favored by 5.5. The over-under is 49. Michael Thomas is out. Derek Carr had a solid opener, and the Raiders can't control the clock with Josh Jacobs running the ball. So I go ahead, I take the Raiders, and it depends if you want to give up the 5.5. Saints are favored by 5.5, but I think the Raiders are going to pull this one out, and the Saints will be 1-1. So go ahead and take the Raiders and the over. The over, again, in this case, is 49. I don't like the line. 5.5. I would rather move that up to about 7. So if you take the Raiders, hopefully the line's going to move a little bit closer to 6 or 7, but I don't like the line, so I wouldn't necessarily take the Raiders in this. I wouldn't necessarily take the Saints in this game, even though they're favored by 5.5. Well, that should wrap up this edition of the From the Bench podcast. My name is Mark Janish. If you'd like to support the From the Bench podcast, listen to the announcer as he lets you know how you can support the podcast. This has been my Week 2 NFL picks for September the 19th, 2020. Until next time, everybody, you have a great day and a good weekend, and enjoy the NFL games, the MLB games coming down to the wire as the season ends on September 27th with the expanded playoffs. You have a good afternoon. Thanks for listening. Once again, I'm Mark Janish. You can go to accessmediaglobal.com. Listen to all previous podcasts and even this one when it gets posted. Thanks once again for listening, everyone. And until next time, I'm your host, Mark Janish. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the From the Bench Sports Podcast. You can listen to this and any other podcast episode on Libsyn, Stitcher Radio, and Spotify. If you'd like to support the From the Bench podcast, you may go to the AccessMediaGlobal.com website and click on the Donate tab.